It was my very first time flying, and the world seemed to tilt in all directions. The sky outside the plane's window was painted with shades of blue I had never seen before, and the feeling of being so high up was both exhilarating and terrifying. But nothing could prepare me for what would happen next. The turbulence hit suddenly, unexpectedly, causing the plane to shake violently, sending a cold rush of fear through me. I gripped the armrest, my heart pounding in my chest, praying that we'd make it through. That's when I saw him, Captain Arian, standing at the front of the cabin, calm as ever, his confident gaze meeting mine as if to reassure me. He wasn't just any pilot, there was something magnetic about him, something that immediately made me feel safe, despite the chaos surrounding us. As the minutes passed, I watched him from my seat, the way he moved with ease, his sharp eyes scanning everything with precision. I couldn't help but be drawn to him, but as the turbulence subsided and the plane leveled out, I realized something. I didn't just feel a fleeting attraction. There was a pull, something deeper, something unexpected. Once we landed safely, I tried to shake off the strange feeling that had settled in my chest, but fate had other plans. A few weeks later, I found myself at an aviation event, trying to gain some experience for my new job. And there he was again, Captain Arian. This time, he wasn't in his pilot uniform, but his presence was just as commanding. He flashed a smile when he saw me, and somehow, the tension that had been building in my chest seemed to vanish. We spoke, not about flying or planes, but about life, about the risks we take, the choices we make, and the dreams we chase. His voice was calm, almost hypnotic, and before I knew it, I was telling him things I'd never told anyone. Something inside me had shifted, and though I was hesitant to admit it, I knew that meeting Arian wasn't just a coincidence. There was something about him that made me feel alive, something about him that made me want to take risks. But with that feeling came a wave of uncertainty. He was different from anyone I had ever known. His world was far beyond my reach. And yet, as we parted that day, his words echoed in my mind, a promise I couldn't yet understand. Life's an adventure, Arohi. And sometimes, the most beautiful journeys are the ones that scare us the most. Part 2. The unexpected journey. The days that followed were a blur of routine, but something had shifted inside me. I couldn't stop thinking about Arian, about the way he spoke, the way his eyes seemed to see right through me. The strange pull I had felt the first time we met lingered, like an unspoken promise. But what could I do about it? My life was just beginning, and I had dreams to chase. The world outside felt so vast, so full of possibilities, but I had always kept myself within. Then, one day, an email changed everything. I had been invited to travel with Arian for a work-related project, an opportunity I couldn't pass up. A part of me hesitated, the fear of the unknown creeping in, but another part of me, an adventurous, bolder part, urged me to go. And so, without much thought, I booked the flight. The moment I boarded the plane, the familiar hum of the engines, the smell of the cabin, and the sight of the endless sky outside brought a rush of excitement. But this time, it wasn't just about the flight. Arian was at the helm, guiding us through the clouds. The warmth of his presence was undeniable, and as we soared above the world, I found myself watching him once more. This time, from the cockpit, he was focused, a natural leader, but there was a vulnerability in his eyes that I hadn't noticed before. Maybe it was the weight of the responsibility he carried, or the loneliness that seemed to follow him wherever he went. Whatever it was, it intrigued me. During our stopover in Dubai, things took a turn. What was meant to be a simple business trip quickly turned into an unexpected adventure. A series of events led us into a dangerous situation, something none of us had prepared for. We found ourselves entangled in a chaotic chase, trying to escape the clutches of a criminal syndicate that had no intention of letting us go. I had never been in a situation like this before. My heart raced as we ran through the crowded streets, trying to stay one step ahead of those who wanted to harm us. But through it all, Arian remained calm. His quick thinking and ability to stay composed under pressure saved us more than once. He had this way of making everything seem manageable, even when danger loomed at every corner. And in those moments, as I looked into his eyes, I saw something I hadn't expected. He wasn't just a skilled pilot. He was a protector, someone who would go to great lengths for those he cared about. The fear I had felt earlier began to fade, replaced by a sense of trust, a trust I had never given so freely to anyone before. But that trust came with a price. I realized I was beginning to care for Arian in a way I couldn't control. As the sun dipped below the horizon that night, I found myself standing next to him on a quiet balcony overlooking the city. The soft glow of the lights reflected in his eyes, and for a brief moment, the world around us seemed to disappear. He turned to me, his voice low, almost a whisper. "Life's not about the destination, Arohi," he said. "It's about the journey, and sometimes the most beautiful moments happen when we least expect them." And in that moment I understood, our journey had only just begun. Part 3. The kiss that changed everything. The days after our close escape in Dubai felt like a whirlwind. Every time I thought about what we had gone through, my heart would race with both fear and excitement. Arian was always calm, always in control, but I saw the toll the events had taken on him. He didn't speak much about it, but the way he looked at me sometimes, like he was carrying a weight he couldn't share, told me everything. We continued our travels, moving from one city to the next, each place more breathtaking than the last. But with every beautiful moment came a growing tension between us, a pull I couldn't deny. I could feel it when he was near me, the way he'd catch my gaze and hold it just a second longer than necessary, the small lingering touches when he handed me something or guided me through a crowded space. I wasn't sure if it was just the shared experiences or something more. I hadn't expected to feel this way, but every moment we spent together made it harder to ignore. One evening, as we were preparing to board the plane for yet another destination, we found ourselves alone on the tarmac. The sky was painted in shades of orange and pink, the cool evening breeze brushing against my skin. Arian stood by the plane, looking out at the horizon. There was something about him in that moment, something vulnerable, yet incredibly powerful. He turned to me as if he had sensed my gaze, his eyes softening as they met mine. "Ari," he said quietly, his voice low, almost like he was debating whether to speak at all. "You know, I've seen a lot in this life, things most people would never imagine. But in the midst of all the chaos, there's something about you, you make everything seem simpler. Like I'm not always running, you know, like I can just be." His words were like a confession, raw and real. My heart skipped a beat. I didn't know what to say, but I didn't have to say anything. He took a step closer, his presence overwhelming in the best way possible. And then, without warning, he leaned down and kissed me. It was soft at first, a gentle brush of his lips against mine, but it quickly deepened, turning into something that felt like it had been waiting to happen for ages. I had no idea what I was doing, what this kiss meant. All I knew was that it felt like the world had stopped spinning, like nothing else mattered except the way he made me feel. In that moment, I wasn't just a passenger on his plane. I wasn't just a girl from a small town with big dreams. I was someone who had allowed herself to be swept away by the kind of connection I had never believed in until now. When we finally pulled away, both of us breathless, Arian didn't say anything at first. He just looked at me, as if searching for something in my eyes. I wasn't sure what he was looking for, but I knew what I had found in that kiss. It wasn't just passion or desire. It was something deeper, something I couldn't put into words. For a moment we both stood there, suspended in time, before he spoke again. "I shouldn't have done that," he said, his voice low and almost regretful. "But I don't regret it." Part 4. The Risk of Love. The days that followed the kiss felt different, charged with something unspoken, something that both terrified and thrilled me. Arian and I kept our distance, as if we were both afraid to cross a line that we knew we couldn't uncross. The air between us was thick with tension, and yet there was also an undeniable pull that neither of us could escape. We continued our journey, hopping from one city to the next, but something had shifted. Every glance, every touch felt more intense, more deliberate. I could see it in Arian's eyes, the way he watched me when he thought I wasn't looking. There was something deeper there now, something he wasn't ready to admit, but it was clear. He was just as affected by that kiss as I was, though he hid it behind his usual stoic expression. One evening, as we sat on the balcony of our hotel room, watching the city lights twinkle below, Arian spoke up. "Ari," he began, his voice soft but serious, "you know that nothing about my life is simple. There are things I can't share with you, things that could hurt you." His words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. I looked at him, my heart skipping a beat. "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I've lived a life full of risks. I've made choices that put me in situations I don't want you to be a part of. But no matter how hard I try, I can't seem to stay away from you. And that scares me." His honesty, his vulnerability, hit me harder than I expected. I knew this was more than just a passing fling for him. He was a man who had built walls around his heart, walls that I had somehow started to tear down with every moment we shared. But even as I felt the same pull, I couldn't ignore the fear growing inside me. What would happen if I let myself fall completely for him? Would I be able to handle the consequences? I leaned forward, my gaze locked on his. "Arian, I know your life isn't easy, but I'm not afraid of the risks. I've spent so long playing it safe, and I don't want to live like that anymore. I want to be with you, no matter what." For a moment, there was silence. The city below us seemed to fade away as Arian stared at me, his expression unreadable. Then, slowly, he reached for my hand, his touch warm and firm. "Ari," he whispered, his voice filled with both resolve and uncertainty. "You're not just someone I care about. You're someone I've come to need, and that's something I never thought would happen." The weight of his words hit me hard. I had never expected to hear him say something like that, especially after all the walls he had built around himself. But in that moment, I knew that no matter how much we tried to fight it, we were both in this together now. Our relationship had crossed a threshold, one that neither of us could turn back from. And though I still had doubts, though the fear of the unknown still lingered, I couldn't help but believe that whatever came next, it would be worth it. Part 5. Secrets and Lies. As the days passed, Arian and I grew closer, but the shadow of his past still loomed over us. There was something about him that I couldn't quite understand, something he kept hidden, something he wasn't ready to share. Every time I tried to ask him about it, he would dodge the question, change the subject, or offer a vague answer. I could sense that the weight of his secrets was slowly eating away at him, but he refused to let me in. The more we traveled, the more I noticed his restlessness, his constant need to be in control, to make sure everything was in order. It was as though the man who had kissed me so passionately just days ago was slipping further and further away. And I felt helpless, caught between wanting to get closer to him and the fear that I was only getting pulled deeper into a world I didn't fully understand. Then, one evening, everything changed. We were in Paris, one of the most romantic cities in the world. The lights of the Eiffel Tower shone brightly against the dark sky as we walked along the Seine. The atmosphere was perfect, romantic, enchanting, but it felt like a ticking time bomb. There was an underlying tension between us, a storm waiting to break. "I can't keep doing this, Arian said suddenly, his voice tense. "I can't keep pretending that everything is okay when it's not. I'm not the man you think I am." His words hit me like a punch to the chest. I stopped walking, turning to face him. "What do you mean?" I asked, my heart pounding. He hesitated, running a hand through his hair. "There's a part of me that I've kept buried for so long, a part I never wanted you to see. But now, I can't hide it anymore. It's going to change everything between us." My mind raced, my stomach sinking. What was he trying to say? What had he been hiding all this time? I had a sinking feeling that this wasn't just about his past, it was something bigger, something more dangerous. Before I could respond, he continued, his voice barely above a whisper. "I've been involved in things that are far beyond what you could ever imagine. Dangerous people, dangerous situations, and if you stay with me, you're going to be dragged into it too." I could see the pain in his eyes, the regret, the fear. He was trying to protect me, but in doing so, he was pushing me away. I could feel my heart breaking as the distance between us grew. "Arian, I don't care about your past," I said, my voice trembling. "I don't care about the things you've done. I care about you. I care about who you are now, not the mistakes you made before." But he shook his head, taking a step back. "You don't understand, Ari. It's not that simple. I can't let you be a part of this. It's too dangerous. You deserve better than this." I reached out to him, desperate to make him see that I wasn't afraid of whatever his past was. But as my hand brushed his, he pulled away, his expression hardening. "You need to go, Ari," he said, his voice cold. "For your own safety." I stood there frozen, as the man I had come to trust, the man who had once made me feel invincible, pushed me away. The pain in my chest was unbearable, but I knew he was right. He was trying to protect me in his own twisted way. The man I thought I knew was hiding more than just secrets. He was hiding a past that could destroy everything we had. Part 6. The Crossroads of Fate. The days after that night in Paris felt like a lifetime. Arian's words haunted me, echoing in my mind as I lay awake, staring at the ceiling in the quiet hotel room. I had left him in the shadow of his secrets, a heartbroken mess, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't done with him, that we weren't done with each other. Despite everything, I knew deep down that I couldn't just walk away. There was too much between us, too much I couldn't explain, and far too many things left unsaid. I had tried to move on, to distract myself with the distractions of the world, but nothing felt right without him. Every plane I boarded felt empty. Every city I visited seemed less vibrant. I wasn't the same person I had been before I met Arian. The journey had already changed me, in ways I couldn't understand, and the man I had kissed, the man I had come to care for, had left a mark on my heart that couldn't be erased. And then, one night, a message came through on my phone. It was from him. Arihi, I know I've hurt you, but I need your help. There's no one else I can turn to. Meet me, I'll explain everything. Please. I didn't hesitate. There was no question. Despite the fear gnawing at me, despite the uncertainty, I knew this was my chance. My chance to understand, my chance to help, and most of all, my chance to be there for him, just as he had been there for me when I needed him. I met him in a quiet alleyway, near the airport, the dim streetlights casting long shadows on the pavement. When I saw him, my heart skipped a beat. He looked different, more tired, more worn, but there was a sense of urgency in his eyes that made me worry. He stepped forward, his gaze locking onto mine. I'm sorry for what happened, Arihi, he said, his voice raw. But there's more to all of this than I ever told you. You deserve to know the truth. My heart was racing. The secrets he had kept from me were finally coming to light, and I could feel the weight of them pressing down on both of us. What's going on, Arian? I asked softly, my voice trembling. What did you mean by all that? He took a deep breath and ran a hand through his hair, looking out at the distant lights of the city. I've been part of something bigger than I ever realized, something dangerous. I'm being hunted, Arihi. There are people out there who want me dead, and I've tried to keep you away from it. But now they know about you, and they won't stop until they get what they want. His words sent a chill down my spine, and I felt the world around me tilt as fear surged through my veins. He wasn't just a pilot anymore. He was a man on the run, caught in a web of danger he couldn't escape from. Why didn't you tell me this before? I whispered, my heart breaking all over again. He shook his head, frustration flashing in his eyes. I didn't want to drag you into this. I thought I could protect you, keep you safe, but I was wrong. I need your help, Arihi. I don't have much time. I took a step closer, feeling my heart race as I processed the gravity of his words. How can I help you? I asked, my voice steady despite the fear coursing through me. Arian reached out and took my hands in his grip tight, desperate. There's a piece of information, something important that I need to retrieve. I can't do it alone. If I go back, they'll kill me. But if we work together, if you can get me to that place, I have a chance. I swallowed hard, the weight of his request pressing down on me. This wasn't just about love anymore. This was about survival. It was about trusting him, trusting myself, and diving headfirst into a world I knew nothing about. But as I looked into his eyes, something deep inside me told me that this was the path I was meant to take. Our journey had already started, and there was no turning back. All right, I said, my voice steady with resolve. I'll help you. Arian's expression softened, a mix of gratitude and something deeper, something I couldn't quite place. You don't know what this means to me, he said quietly, his voice trembling for the first time. And in that moment, I knew that no matter what lay ahead, we would face it together. Part 7. Into the Abyss. The days following our agreement felt like we were walking on a razor's edge. There was no turning back now. Arian and I had stepped into a world of shadows, where every step we took felt dangerous, every word spoken could betray us, and every moment could be our last. But despite the fear that gnawed at me, there was a part of me that felt alive in a way I had never experienced before. For once I was no longer just a spectator in my own life. I was part of something bigger, something that challenged everything I thought I knew. We moved in silence, Arian's plans unfolding piece by piece, as he guided me through his carefully thought-out strategy. Every step was calculated, every move deliberate. But no matter how carefully we planned, I could feel the pressure building with each passing day, the fear of being caught, of being discovered, growing with every breath I took. We found ourselves in a small, dimly lit safe house, in a quiet neighborhood on the outskirts of the city. It was an old, worn-down building, with peeling paint and broken windows, but it was secure. At least, that's what Arian kept telling me. As we entered the building, I could sense the weight of his thoughts, the tension in his every movement. He was trying to keep his emotions in check, but I could see it in his eyes. He was scared, and for the first time, I realized that I wasn't the only one afraid. "Are you sure about this?" I asked, as we sat down in the dusty living room, the only light coming from a single lamp in the corner. My heart was racing, my nerves on edge, as I tried to calm myself. Arian didn't answer immediately. Instead, he looked at the floor, his jaw clenched. Then he turned to me, his eyes filled with a mixture of fear and determination. "There's no other choice," he said softly. "We have to do this. For both of us." His words hit me hard. For both of us. That was the weight we carried now. This wasn't just about him anymore, about his past or his enemies. It was about us, about our future, and whether we had one at all. We spent the next few hours preparing, checking and rechecking our plans, making sure we were ready for whatever came next. Arian was meticulous, focused and determined, but I could see the cracks starting to show. The stress, the fear, the constant danger, it was taking its toll on him. But even in the face of everything, he never once faltered. He couldn't, not with me by his side. As the night wore on, I couldn't help but feel the weight of the choices we had made. I had no idea what we were walking into, no idea what kind of danger lay ahead. But I knew one thing for certain: I had already chosen him. I had chosen to stand by his side, no matter what, and no matter how much danger we faced. I wasn't going to leave. At dawn, we set out again, moving quickly and quietly through the dark streets. The tension between us was palpable, but there was something else, something that had changed between us since that night in Paris. We weren't just two people caught up in a whirlwind anymore. We were partners in this, in every sense of the word. And that thought, as dangerous as it was, gave me strength. We reached the location, a secluded warehouse on the edge of town, just as the first light of day began to break over the horizon. Arian's hand tightened around mine, his grip strong and reassuring. "This is it," he whispered, his voice steady despite the fear in his eyes. "Once we get inside, there's no going back." I nodded, feeling the weight of his words sink in. We had already crossed so many lines, done so many things we could never undo. But the thought of turning back now, of leaving him to face whatever awaited inside that warehouse alone, was impossible. We were in this together. As we stepped inside, the air felt thick with danger, the silence almost suffocating. We moved cautiously, sticking to the shadows, the sound of our footsteps echoing in the empty space. Every creak of the floor, every distant sound made my heart race. My breath caught in my throat as we neared the inner room, the one Arian had been after for so long. Just as we reached the door, a noise broke the silence. A footstep, followed by a sharp voice. "You shouldn't have come here." I froze. Arian's expression darkened, his hand subtly moving to his side, ready for whatever was coming next. The moment we had feared had arrived, and there was no way out. Part 8. The enemy within. The voice that echoed through the warehouse felt like a blow to the chest. For a moment, time seemed to freeze. Arian's grip on my hand tightened, his eyes scanning the shadows, as if searching for the source of the voice. I could feel the adrenaline pumping through my veins, the cold sweat on the back of my neck. This was it, the moment we had both been preparing for, the moment where everything could change in an instant. The figure stepped forward from the darkness, emerging into the faint light. My heart stopped as I saw who it was. It was a man I didn't recognize, but his presence was unsettling. He had a cold, calculating look in his eyes, the kind of gaze that made my skin crawl. His face was hardened, scarred, his expression one of disdain, as though he knew exactly who we were, and what we had come for. "Arian," he said, his voice laced with venom. "You're still trying to escape your past. I thought you'd be smarter than this." Arian's jaw clenched, but he didn't back down. "I'm not running anymore," he replied, his voice steady despite the tension. And I'm not here to talk. The man chuckled darkly, his laugh echoing in the hollow space. You think you have control of this situation. You're nothing more than a pawn in a game that's already been decided. I glanced at Arian, his face unreadable, but in his eyes, I saw something else, something I hadn't noticed before, a hint of fear. It wasn't something I had ever imagined seeing in him. Arian was a man who had always been in control, who had always held the power in every situation. But now, in front of this man, he seemed vulnerable. Who are you? I asked, my voice shaking slightly, though I tried to keep it steady. The fear inside me was real, but I couldn't let it show. The man smirked, his eyes flicking to me with amusement. You really don't know, do you? He said. I'm someone who's been watching both of you, waiting for the right moment. You think you're just two people caught up in this mess, but you've been playing my game all along. And now, it's time to pay the price. The words didn't make sense. Who was this man? What was he talking about? It was as though a veil had been lifted, revealing a whole new layer to this nightmare we were living. Arian's past was darker than I had ever imagined, and this man seemed to know more about it than anyone else. You were always the perfect soldier, Arian. The man continued, stepping closer, his voice dripping with sarcasm. But I guess even the perfect soldier has weaknesses. And you, he pointed at me, are his weakness. I felt a chill run down my spine. Everything that had happened between Arian and me, all the moments we had shared, suddenly felt like part of a much larger plan. A plan that neither of us understood. The pieces were falling into place, but the bigger picture was still a mystery. Arian's eyes never left the man. This ends now, he said, his voice cold and unwavering. I'm not going to let you use her against me. The man raised an eyebrow, clearly amused. You think you have a choice? You're already too far gone. You're tangled in this web and there's no getting out. Before I could say anything, Arian moved in front of me, his body blocking mine as if to protect me. It was a gesture that spoke volumes, but it also made me realize the danger we were in. He was putting himself in harm's way, just like he always did. And for me. The man stepped back, his eyes narrowing. You're willing to sacrifice everything, aren't you? He said, his tone suddenly serious. For her? You really think she's worth it? I felt a wave of emotions wash over me, fear, confusion, and something deeper. It wasn't just about me being caught in the crossfire. It was about the trust I had placed in Arian, the belief that we were in this together, no matter the cost. You don't understand, I said, stepping forward, my voice trembling with determination. This isn't just about him anymore, it's about us. We're not just pawns in your game. We're people and we're going to fight back. The man's gaze flickered with something, surprise, maybe even respect, but it was fleeting. His smirk returned, colder than ever. You have no idea what you're up against. Without warning, the air around us seemed to shift. The man signaled to someone in the shadows, and suddenly the atmosphere was charged with an even greater sense of danger. I knew, in that moment, that our lives were hanging by a thread, and there was no telling which direction it would snap. Part 9. The battle within the silence that followed felt like a suffocating fog. The man's eyes bore into mine, and despite the fear that was rising within me, there was a spark of defiance that ignited deep inside. I wasn't going to let him control this moment. Not now, not after everything we had been through. I couldn't. Arian's hand subtly moved to his pocket, his fingers brushing the cool metal of a gun hidden there, but he didn't pull it out. Instead, he kept his focus on the man, waiting for the right moment. I could feel the tension between them, thick and palpable. This was no longer just about survival. It was a battle for our lives, for our freedom, and for something neither of us had even realized we were fighting for our future. You've already lost, the man said with a low chuckle. You're in too deep. This is bigger than anything you can understand. You can't win, Arian. You never could. Arian's jaw tightened, but he didn't flinch. His eyes were locked on the man's, and I saw something shift in him. It was as if he had made a choice, one that he had been putting off for far too long. You think you have all the answers, don't you? Arian said, his voice low but fierce. But you're wrong. The man smirked, clearly enjoying the confrontation. Am I? He asked, stepping closer, almost taunting him. You really believe you can take me down? Before Arian could respond, the sound of footsteps echoed behind us, sharp and rapid. My heart stopped. I whipped around, my mind racing, but the dimly lit warehouse revealed nothing but the shadows. Then, in an instant, the door slammed open, and armed men rushed in from all sides. I gasped, the situation quickly spiraling into chaos. Arian stepped in front of me, blocking the incoming attackers, his body a shield between me and them. His eyes flickered briefly to me, a silent message that I understood. Run, he mouthed, but there was no time. The warehouse had become a trap. The men circled us, their weapons raised, their faces grim and unfeeling. I could hear Arian's steady breaths, the tension in his body as he prepared for the inevitable confrontation. He wasn't afraid. I could see that now, he was fighting for something far greater than his own life. I told you, Arian, the man said, his tone dark, mocking. You've been running from this for too long. And now, it's time to face the consequences. My pulse pounded in my ears as I glanced at Arian, who was scanning the room, calculating his next move. We're not running anymore, he said firmly, his voice filled with conviction. I felt the weight of his words settle in my chest. This wasn't about us anymore. This wasn't just about love or survival. This was about something far more powerful, the choice to stand together, to face the darkness and fight for what we believed in. The first man lunged toward Arian, his weapon raised, but Arian was faster, his body moving with practiced precision. In a fluid motion, he disarmed the man and knocked him to the ground with a swift punch. The others hesitated, momentarily thrown off by Arian's strength and skill. It was clear they hadn't expected him to fight back like this. He wasn't just a pilot, he was a warrior, and he wasn't going down without a fight. As the fight unfolded around us, my heart raced. I was frozen, unsure of what to do. The chaos was overwhelming, and every time I thought I had a moment to react, another enemy appeared. I watched Arian fight with a kind of ferocity I hadn't seen before. Each movement was calculated, each strike delivered with the power of someone who had been through hell, and come back stronger for it. The man in charge stood at a distance, watching the battle unfold with a look of amusement. You can't win, Arian, he said again, his voice laced with malice. This is my game, and you've already lost. But Arian didn't flinch. He was moving like a machine now, each step bringing him closer to the man who had orchestrated this nightmare. His eyes never left him, his gaze cold and unwavering. You've underestimated me, Arian replied, his voice filled with cold rage. And now you're going to regret it. In a flash, Arian reached the man, his hand grabbing the collar of his shirt and slamming him against the wall. The sound echoed through the warehouse, the force of Arian's anger almost palpable. The man struggled, but Arian was relentless. You thought you had control, but you didn't, Arian growled. You never did. I've always been in control. I watched in awe as Arian stood over the man, his chest heaving with exertion, his eyes burning with an intensity I had never seen before. In that moment, I realized how much of a fighter he truly was, not just in the physical sense, but in his ability to never back down from a fight, no matter how impossible it seemed. The man gasped for breath, his hands pushing against Arian's grip, but it was clear he was no longer in control. You can't, he rasped, his voice weak. You can't defeat me, I've already won, but Arian's grip only tightened. Not today, he said, his voice cold and final. The battle was far from over, but in that moment, I knew we were winning. Part 10, the final showdown. The man's struggles grew weaker under Arian's unyielding grip. He gasped for air, his eyes wide with panic, as the realization set in that he had underestimated Arian, the one person he thought he could control. But there was no escape now. Arian's fury was a force to be reckoned with, and it was clear that he wasn't going to let this man go unpunished for the years of pain and deceit. Do you really think you can break me? The man spat, his voice dripping with contempt. Arian's eyes burned with a fire that was both terrifying and captivating. I'm done with running, and I'm done with you. With a swift motion, Arian slammed the man's body against the cold concrete wall, his grip tightening as he spoke. You were never in control, and now you're going to pay the price for every life you've destroyed. The man laughed, but there was no humor in it, only desperation. You can't stop this, Arian. There's too much at stake. Too many people involved. But Arian didn't waver. The only person I need to worry about is the woman I love, he said, his voice low and resolute. His eyes flickered briefly to me, and in that moment, everything that had brought us to this point became crystal clear. We were no longer just survivors, we were fighters, standing side by side, ready to face whatever came our way. I stepped forward, feeling the weight of the moment. Enough of this, I said, my voice steady despite the storm of emotions inside me. You've hurt enough people, it's time for this to end. The man's eyes narrowed, a flash of recognition crossing his face. He had underestimated me too. I wasn't just some bystander in this fight, I had become a part of it, an equal standing alongside Arian, sharing the same fight, and together we were unstoppable. Arian's grip on the man loosened, just enough for him to gasp for breath. But before he could speak, Arian pulled back and punched him hard, sending him crashing to the floor. The man crumpled, his body collapsing in defeat. The fight had been won, but it wasn't over yet. The sound of footsteps echoed through the warehouse once more, and I turned to see more figures emerging from the shadows. But this time, it wasn't more enemies, it was the rest of Arian's allies, people who had been watching, waiting for the right moment to strike. They had come to help, to ensure that the enemy's reign of terror was finally over. Arian didn't take his eyes off the man, but he nodded in acknowledgement of his allies. It's done, he said quietly, as though the words had finally set him free. The weight that had been crushing him for so long seemed to lift, replaced by a sense of victory, of finality. But even as the danger subsided, I knew that the consequences of our actions wouldn't simply disappear. We had made enemies who would stop at nothing to bring us down. There was no going back to the life we had before. Our future was now uncertain, filled with both hope and fear. I stepped closer to Arian, my heart pounding in my chest. What now? I asked softly, my voice filled with a mixture of curiosity and concern. He looked at me, his expression softer than I had ever seen it. Now we take control of our own lives, he said. Together, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I felt a glimmer of hope. The road ahead was uncertain, filled with dangers we couldn't predict, but we weren't alone. We had each other. As we walked out of the warehouse, hand in hand, the world outside seemed a little brighter. The sun was just beginning to rise, casting a warm golden light across the horizon. The battle was over, but the war for our future was just beginning. But no matter what came next, I knew that as long as we were together, nothing could break us. Part 11. One kiss changed everything. Days passed. The chaos faded, the enemies scattered, and the dust finally began to settle. But in my heart, something had shifted forever. I was no longer the same girl who boarded that plane, curious and unsure, and Arian, he wasn't just the pilot, who once tried to hide behind rules and restraint. He had become my savior, my protector, my everything. We left the city behind, its noise, its danger, its memories, and traveled to a quiet coastal town, where no one knew our names. For the first time in a long while, we could breathe without fear. There were no shadows following us, no lies waiting to explode, just the sound of waves, the smell of sea salt, and the promise of a new beginning. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson, Arian stood behind me, on a wooden deck overlooking the ocean. The breeze danced through my hair, as I closed my eyes, feeling his warmth behind me. I never thought I'd live to see peace again, he said softly. I didn't believe I deserved it. I turned to him, reaching for his hand. But you do, we both do. He smiled, a smile that had once been so rare, but now came so naturally when he looked at me. You changed everything, Arohi. You walked into my life like a storm, and somehow you made it feel like home. I swallowed the lump in my throat, overwhelmed by how far we had come, from strangers in the clouds, to soulmates in the silence. And you were the pilot who took me on a journey I never expected. I thought I was just running from heartbreak, but I ended up flying straight into love. He stepped closer, his hands cupping my face, his eyes locked on mine. That first kiss, the one I never planned to give, it ruined me. I smiled. No, it saved us both. And there, Under the open sky with the sea, as our witness, Arian leaned in and kissed me again, slowly, deeply, but this time, it wasn't stolen, it wasn't forbidden, it was a promise. A promise of forever, because one kiss had changed everything. And now, love was the only destination we were flying to.